Welcome back for this segment of Parenting Like a Pro with the Smileys. Welcome back.
Thank you.
This next question, I cannot wait to hear what you two are going to say about it. Here's the question from a parent. Do you ever think it is legitimate to ignore your child's behavior? Smileys?
Well, yes, sometimes it is legitimate to ignore
Really?
it. Right,
Okay.
absolutely. Sometimes they're just sort of poking at you to get your attention, and maybe it's something you can ignore, or they're poking at a sibling. The things that you can't ignore, though, that's what we want to take a look at. Things that are dangerous. You cannot ignore that. You know, your child runs out on the street. Oh, well, that'll work itself out. No, that's dangerous. So you can't do that. You've got to make sure the child understands the boundary, and in that example, of course, it's the edge of the street, and the consequence for crossing that boundary.
Right, and the other things that you can't ignore as a parent are things like when the kids destroy property.
Right.
That can't be, whether it's their property, whether it's somebody else's property, you can't ignore that. The other one is defiance. When a child is defiant and basically says, you know, you ask the child or tell the child to do something and they say no. Obviously, that's not something to be ignored. Again, like Kendra said, some of those things that can be ignored, we put those in the classification of like childish behavior or some things that are annoying. And then as a parent, you decide whether you're going to ignore them or not. And sometimes it's best to ignore them. Sometimes the child is just trying to get attention, and if you ignore it, you know, the behavior goes away. So it's one of those things that I say often when we're doing seminars. It's why parents get paid the big bucks. And that's one of those things that you can't really say, well, this, you know, the three behaviors of destroying things, defiance, and dangerous, we can say, but other things, then as a parent, you have to decide if you're going to ignore it or if you're going to address it.
Right.
Now, is it good to also have some type of communication with the child about why you're not necessarily paying attention to a particular behavior?
That's a possibility.
Is that
yeah.
okay?
Sometimes it's okay. And again, that's what John said, you know, you have to make that decision. You have to make that call. But yeah, it might be all right to go, you know, this is something we're not going to talk about. If it's a whining behavior and you want to ignore that, you can simply let them know you're going to be ignoring it. You might notice mom's not paying attention. Actually, I used to say at our house, I can't hear you when you're whining. You know, that was a behavior I chose not to respond to what they were whining about, but letting them know I didn't want to hear the whining.
And it worked.
No.
Yes, and I have not heard them whine for years.
Perfect.
But that is something, you know, like we're not going to talk to you when you're whining, and that's what we
Right.
said. You whine, and we're not going to address what you're talking about. Quit your whining, talk to us, and we'll have a conversation with you, and that eliminates the whining.
And that's great because it sets an expectation for the child.
That's exactly right.
Especially if they really want to be heard.
That's exactly.
Perfect advice.
And most kids do.
Perfect advice. Well, thank you so much for that advice. And remember, if you send in your question to John and Kendra at kendrasmiley.com and we answer it on air, you'll get a free copy of one of their books.